Welcome to Fine Tool Review. My name is Morton, and today I'm doing some sharpening on my planer blades using the Tormek T-7. Right here is a planer blade attachment for the Tormek, the SVH-320. Fine Tool Review is proudly sponsored by Highland Woodworking. Check them out at highlandwoodworking.com. The Tormek plain blade attachment SVH-320 comes with the support here. It comes with the blade holder that rides along the support, and it comes with an attachment screw that goes into the support, and an Allen key, and of course the instruction booklet. Now I'm going to go ahead and go through the instruction booklet today and show you all the steps. I found it very straightforward to use the instruction booklet. There's a dozen or so steps, but each one is clearly marked and laid out and easy to follow. And we're going to go ahead and sharpen planer blades out of my Delta planer. First, I need to pop the blades out of my planer. So I popped out the two planer blades out of my planer, and I marked which side was currently cutting. These are double-edged, so I marked which side is currently cutting, and I'm going to sharpen that side first. Let me go ahead and show you how we set up the jig on the Tormek T-7, and then we'll get to sharpening these blades. The first thing we want to do is make sure that our wheel is perfectly round and square and clean. So if you need to, go ahead and use the truing tool to clean up the wheel. Then go ahead and pop off the universal support on the Tormek T-7, and we'll put on the planer jig support. So it just pops right in, and you can lock it down here at the back. So now I'm going to go ahead and drop my blade into the jig, and it goes bevel side down. So this is the back of the blade. Bevel's now at the bottom. And I'm just going to drop it in there. And I want to make sure that it's nestled right there at the bottom. Not lifted up at all, but nestled right there at the bottom all the way across. Go ahead and drop it in. Tighten up the thumb screws all the way across. Snug them up. And I'll put the blade, the end of the blade, right near this first thumb screw. And these are about 13-inch blades. So it's hanging off the end here, but that's fine. This jig can work with blades that are longer than 12 inches. So we'll just put this one right at this knob, and then when we're done grinding this section, we'll go ahead and move the blade over and grind the rest of it. Now that I've got the blade in there, I'm going to go ahead and draw with a permanent marker all the way along the blade here, and this will help us see exactly where we're grinding. To make sure the blade doesn't run off the wheel as you're grinding, you can set the stop here. This little pin hits this stop, so make sure that you set that using the supplied Allen key. You can move it over to make sure that your blade never runs off of the wheel. And of course, there's a stop at the other end for the other end of the blade. We want to set our initial bevel angle to the same bevel that's currently on the planer blade. So we'll take the jig and make sure it's tight to the support, that there's no gap between the jig and the support, and we'll raise and lower the whole support using the micro adjusting screws on the back and the adjustment screw, which raises and lowers the whole jig. And we want to set this initial angle so that the stone is touching all across the bevel of the planer blade. So here on the back, you can raise and lower the whole jig support on the wheels using these micro adjusting screws. Keep them the same on both sides, and then go ahead and lock it in with the two locking screws here. And you can also use this adjustment screw to push the whole support forward and backwards. Take your time, and using the combination of the height adjustment and the adjustment screw, set the initial bevel angle, making sure that the jig is tight to the support and you've got the angle exactly set to your original planer blade angle. The initial adjustment can be a little fussy. Just takes a couple of minutes though. Take your time. Just make sure that the jig is tight to the support, and you just want to set that stone right to the blade at the initial bevel angle. Now that I've got my height pretty much where I want it to be, using the micro adjust thumb screws in the back, I'll double check that we are tight. The jig holding the blade is tight to the sled in the back using a piece of paper. Double check that. And now I'll go ahead and turn the wheel by hand, and this will grind away a little bit of metal right there, and we can double check where we marked it with the marker and make sure that we're grinding at the correct angle. So we'll pull it up here, and you can see I've pretty much ground the marker away right there, and that's just where we want to be. You don't want to be too much at the front or the back, or you're not at the right angle, leaving you a lot of extra work. Now that I've got the jig set at the correct angle to grind away some of the metal, I'm going to go back to those micro adjusting screws in the back and raise them one little number, which is 1/10 of a millimeter. So now I can just barely slip my piece of paper in between the jig holder and the back, and that's the amount of metal that we're going to go ahead and grind away from the front. Two quick tips as I'm getting ready to grind here. The first is that this creates a lot of water dripping off the end of this blade. So what I've done is tilted the machine slightly this direction by putting shim on this side under the feet on the left side of the machine, and therefore the water will drip off the right, and I've got some extra rags sitting on my bench here to catch all that water. Second tip is to make sure you keep pressure on the top here as well as here. If you only put pressure down here near the blade, you can easily pop this off of the sled here. So definitely keep it tight to the sled, and that's going to control your depth of grind. Here we go. Okay, that was definitely about 1 minute or less of going back and forth, and I've reached almost across the whole bevel. But I've hit all the way across the front, and if I feel on the back, I can feel that burr. So I'm very close to my initial angle, a little bit higher, but I hit all the way across the front, raising that burr, so we're good to go. I just have to slide the blade down slightly and hit this last little part. So to do that, simply loosen all these thumb screws, shift the blade, loosen them up, shift the blade. So now this one's right near that thumb screw, right in there. Make sure it's tight to the back. Lock all those up, even pressure across. Put it back down, and we're ready to do the last little bit. Go, got it to the other end. So that was that blade. The grinding took about 1 minute to do the whole thing, and now that that one's done, we'll go ahead and pop the second one into the blade holder, and we've already set everything up, and we're just another minute and we'll be done this edge. And now that I've gone ahead and raised a burr on the back, I'm going to quickly take that off using the strap side here on the Tormek. That is nick-free and pretty darn sharp. So I've ground and honed both my planer blades, in fact both sides. Mine are double beveled, and I ground and honed the other side by simply dropping the jig another 1/10 of a millimeter, flipping the blade around and doing the other side. Once you know what you're doing with the setup here, the whole thing probably takes less than half an hour. Getting the jig in there, getting it set to that initial angle takes a little bit of time just to get it set up just right. And then the grinding takes literally 5 minutes or so to do both blades, both sides. It goes really quickly. Let me go ahead and pop these back in the planer. Now, two things I want to make sure that I mention. The first is that my planer blades are actually disposable blades. They're not really meant to be resharpened. Now, this jig can handle blades that are wider than 1/2 inch, and mine are just barely 1/2 inch. So I was able to sharpen them this time, but I don't think I'm going to get very many sharpenings out of these blades. And of course, the second thing is that this jig can handle both planer blades and jointer blades. So you can do both your planer blades and your jointer blades on this jig. So now you've seen just how easy it is to sharpen planer blades using this attachment for the Tormek. You can sharpen planer blades of any width and jointer blades as well. All in all, it took me maybe an hour. That includes popping the blades out of the planer, setting up the jig, sharpening them, and getting them back in. Once you know what you're doing, the whole thing is pretty straightforward. Now, the jig is pretty expensive, as is the Tormek, okay? But for, I don't know, maybe 180 bucks, you get to resharpen your blades rather than grabbing new ones or using a sharpening service. So go ahead and factor that in, see how many times you're gonna buy new blades, how many times you're gonna sharpen, send them out for sharpening, and this jig actually becomes worthwhile pretty quickly, depending on how often you do that. So it's definitely worth checking out. It's the SVH-320 planer blade attachment for the Tormek T-7. Very easy to use. The instructions I found to be very straightforward, easy to follow, and that's exactly what you've seen in the video today. So thanks for checking out the Tormek jig today on Fine Tool Review. You can always find me on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, and finetoolreview.com. I really like this jig. I found it easy to use, easy to set up. It's on the pricier side, but once you start factoring in the sharpenings, I think the thing does actually pay for itself pretty quickly for both your jointer and your planer knives. You're not buying new ones and you don't have to send them out for sharpening. So let me know what you think about this jig and what you think about the Tormek in general. finetoolreview.com.